You're listening to Tukatalks, the show where fashion industry experts share real-world knowledge gained through hands-on experience.
Greetings. Welcome to another session of Tukatalks. I'm very happy that one of the apparel industry veterans, Jeff Streader, has joined us. I've known Jeff for many years, and he has played many roles. The biggest role that I remember, because I think that was a very big challenge when you were running Guess Jeans. My God, 2008-9, the years that changed the garment industry.
Well,
share some of that.
I'm humbled by your comments, but Guess was owned and run by the Marcianos. Both Maurice and Paul are both legendary, and it was amazing being a part of that team. Maurice and his acute awareness of opportunities in the supply chain and manufacturing in denim and wash, unbelievable, a tremendous man, individual. And Paul, super creative, his black and white imagery, the product that he brought to marketplace through a talented design team led by John Landis. It was unbelievable working there. I was one of the fortunate ones to be a part of the executive leadership team there. And during those tough times in the end of 2008, when the market collapsed and our industry went into a tailspin, the Marcianos were progressive and forward, and they led the way in terms of making important adjustments to payroll, to overhead. And they were difficult times. And I was thinking to myself, why now? But they were right. And we made adjustments to payroll and in headcount, and were able to, through a series of strategic changes to the workflow of the business and our designs and the way that we position product in the marketplace and the price points, we were able to grow in the years 2009, 10, and into 11. And it was counter to the market. It was an amazing time to be there. And I was fortunate to run global operations in the supply chain for Guess, and our business in Europe and China was just on fire at that time. A great company, a really great company. I'm glad you remember that.
Well, I want to introduce you properly.
Thank you.
You have worn a lot of hats in the industry. You worked for some giants, and you worked with some giants as suppliers in Asia.
Yeah.
So your name and face is recognized by many in the garment industry, especially in the denim field. But they also understand your passion for education, your passion for retail, and the changes. And every time I turn around, I see you wearing a new hat. My mantra is change is constant, growth is optional.
Change is important.
In this rapidly changing world, the fashion industry is getting hit by a lot of confusion. I was looking at the reports. The declining imports, the closure of stores and businesses, the growth of micro factories, demand manufacturing, is all over. We don't know where is it going. From the retailer's point of view, from the manufacturer's point of view, from the designer's point of view. What's your take on that?
I have a different point of view, and I'm less bullish than some of those comments that you made. I think it was a tremendous holiday. Retail sales were up 3.4%, and the imports in China were down, which they were, but the imports from Bangladesh, Vietnam, and other important garment-making countries were up. We will not stop wearing clothes and footwear and buying accessories. And I think this is an important time for brands to reset. It's not necessarily what the brand or the retailer or the manufacturer thinks. It's about what she thinks. It's about the consumer. And the brands that listen to her, the brands that capture these various touches, the touches in the retail store, the touches online, the touches in social, wherever it may be, and pull this together to build a single unique profile of her, him or her, and then use this information for targeted messaging. So if you only buy great looking leather jackets and you don't wear denim shirts, I'm not going to send you a message on denim shirts, which is what happens right now. Go onto a website, you key in, you buy something, and bam, you get all of these different spam messages that come in that are not targeted. They're not listening to me. The future is listening to her. The future is understanding what she wants and really curating that delivery, that content, and that product based upon who she is. And that's the key.
How long you been in the industry now?
More than 10 years.
How many 10-year segments?
Several.
Several, okay.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that. In garment industry, when we were all vertical, we had a small supply chain, we had few seasons, we had huge inventories. I still remember, I've been in this industry a long time. So
That's 10 years plus?
Few 10 years segments.
That's good.
More than 5 segments. Yes. So I've seen some changes. I recall having 3 seasons, 1 designer, 20 garments in a line. 18 were runners, a couple of them were dogs.
Yeah.
But we made huge quantities. And it had a 9 months to a year cycle to deliver those.
Yeah.
Everything happened in very large quantities. So did the losses.
Yeah.
So were the gains.
Yeah.
It was so crapshoot type of business where nobody knew if next season, are you going to be standing in the welfare line or are you going to pay off your neighbor's mortgage? That kind of gamble that we took because we didn't have the information, we were working blindly, and we thought we understood the industry. I mean, we have come such a huge distance from that business model to today. And have we hit where we have to be today? Or is it going to go further? Where do you feel it's going to go to?
Change will continue to happen. Change is good. You've talked about the past. The past was good. It was able to, in the companies that I worked with, Oxford Industries, Kelwood, VF Corporation, all multi-billion or billion-dollar companies making large programs for the big box national chains, national specialty store chains. It was productive. We all made money. The business has changed. The growth of online e-commerce has really fostered this change, and it will continue. Just a moment ago, I mentioned to you how I thought it was important to understand her and to understand the personalization. But because of that, even though e-commerce, if we were looking at 100% of the business, and e-commerce today in the United States, it was a tremendous year. I mean, I think that year over year, Christmas was up significant double digits. But what is e-commerce in the United States? It's approaching 20%. Approaching 20%.
For apparel.
For apparel and footwear.
Right.
That means still 80% is done in physical brick and mortar stores.
Correct.
So that experience, the person that still likes to shop online, and we all have our computer and our mobile phone, and we're all looking for that great deal, but that personal experience is still important. So how is this evolving? I think that the industry is evolving toward a more personalized experience, which I mentioned. I think that the retail setting, whether you're going to a restaurant, a shopping location for stores that has restaurants, or the theater, it's all changed, and it's more about experiential retail. And I think that consumers, whether it's a millennial consumer or a non-millennial consumer, we're all interested in the experience. We are. And what does that mean on our supply chain? What does this mean for your customers? It means that it's no longer about winning on price. It's not. You got to be competitive. It's no longer about winning on quality. It's not. Everybody, if you don't have good quality, you're out.
Yeah, it's a given.
It's about agility. It's not even speed to market anymore. It's agility, responsiveness, smaller cuts, being able to make those changes on the fly with advanced technologies and to respond back to her, the consumer. That's the game. And that's where we're changing to. That's where the industry's moving to. And if you, a brand or a retailer, are not agile, it's over.
When I started this company, there were so many big players in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
And having come from one of those big companies, I understood the restrictions the big companies had.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me in 1998, what would be the difference in 2000 onwards in the corporate world? And at that time, my answer was, and it still stays the same, it is not the big that will eat the small, it's the fast that will get the slow.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies now more than ever in the fashion industry at every aspect. So the agility will come from not just one person, but it has to be a discipline. It has to be a culture within a company where everyone has to think. When you have been with the boardrooms, the American management of businesses, I feel they are losing a lot of opportunities by understanding that somebody has to take a risk. That risk taker, the leader, I don't find that in too many companies today. Everybody's trying to have a group decision so it can be shared if there's a failure. That entrepreneurial skills in the senior management is dying in the apparel. What is your view on that? I mean, I'm sharing mine.
I don't share that. I think that there are so many entrepreneurs out there in our industry, both here in the States, in Asia, and in Europe, that I work with, meet with, have conversations with on an ongoing basis now, that have a platform, a capability, a capacity to be able to introduce his or her new line, service, product or service, easier than they ever did before, based upon the fact that you can open a web store on Shopify and quickly use a merchant bank behind you to be able to do business around the world. It's easier than it's ever been before. And with data that you can mine from that online experience, where you could learn where your core customer is coming in. She is coming in from Japan. She's coming in from the UK. She's here in LA, where we are in LA. I think it's a greater opportunity. And so I think it's easier to be an entrepreneur today than it was in 1998. And I'm really excited by that speed of change that we have now through an e-commerce environment.
I totally agree with you. For a startup or an entrepreneur, the opportunities are huge because their thinking process is different. But what does that do to the legacy businesses who have ruled this industry? They are still focused in the old management style. I'll give you a little example. CEO came down, and as we are talking leisurely, he mentioned that we had terrible 3 quarters. And we're praying that the last quarter brings in the results that the shareholders are very happy with. I heard that, and the first thought that came to my mind was, and I kind of spoke my mind with him. I said, the praying is done generally at the hospitals or at the worship places. when there is a question of life and death. In boardrooms, we cannot pray. We've got to take action. I feel that the agility in a larger company is literally not non-existent. And that's one of the reasons I find the large groups are really up in trouble, because those little companies, those entrepreneurs, those who are nibbling a little bit, are amounting to now a major bite size, who are taking that bite from those big legacy brands and legacy retailers. I don't know what your views are on that.
I think that's very interesting. So in 2001, I joined VF Corporation, and VF was a large company, but at that time it was a $6-7 billion company. Portfolio included Wrangler and Lee and some other very strong national brands. We produced for the middle market national chains and big box. VF switched its model at that point from having a divisional way of operating to a matrix organization. And the reason I'm telling you about this is because what happened is the brands, and during the tenure that I was there, we acquired the North Face, we acquired Vans, we acquired numerous other brands. But what VF had was an engine, a back office engine, which was an operations, finance, technology back office that was shared throughout the corporation, allowing the brands the ability to be agile and nimble in the front, focusing on design and marketing and the consumer. And this, when you have a brand, a company, where you don't have to worry about some of the things that are really difficult, the supply chain operations, which is my world, your world, to a large degree, it gives you the freedom to really focus on product in her. The VF model worked through the 5 years that I was with the company. Through 2006, the company grew tremendously and was profitable every year. And that model is one that I think a large company could use, where you don't have the burden of sourcing and manufacturing and an ERP and using all these different things. With that stated, it's a lot more difficult for a retailer like a Kohl's. Kohl's isn't struggling as much. A JCPenney, a Macy's. Macy's just announced they're going to close an additional 39 stores. And you know what? That's a good thing. It's a good thing, because you have to look at velocity. You have to look at conversion. You have to look at four-wall profitability. And the fact that they're doing that, and a lot of these stores are looking at, the size of their box and how they could be more responsive and bring a greater experience to the consumer in the region. So I think it's a good thing in the industry, big box retailers like that, corporations like VF and smaller, as long as you have that component where you could provide the ability to the brand to develop creative product, new product, and be agile about that, it's a good thing.
VF is a great example of letting brands do what brands need to do without having the corporate culture go away. On the contrary, and I'm not looking at just picking on one brand or the other. I think the mistakes teaches people. Experience comes from bad decisions. My definition of experience is learning what not to do. I don't know what to do, but I will experience after doing it, whether it was a right decision or wrong decision. So learning is a continuous process. The few learnings will come from the bad decisions made. Take an amazing brand, Liz Claiborne, died. It died, but it did not die its natural death. It was killed by the management.
Yes.
I mean, when you take a guy like Paul Sharon and decides, I'll give you a check and a sketch, or I'll give you a photo, you make the proto, you just gave away suicide note to every brand by taking the IP, the design, the development, the IP. Whatever used to take 4 hours or 6 hours to develop a product was taking now 4 weeks or 6 weeks, because as a corporation, I wanted to save few dollars. Those bad decisions made by leaders of the industry has a trickling effect on the industry, who look up to these brands to guide them in the right direction. And how many companies decided to follow the same route? Did we ever have a PDM? Did we ever have a tech pack? We talked? A designer would walk into the pattern room and say, Sally, you remember we did this for such and such? I saw the same thing in Europe with these changes. Voila. 4 hours later, the sample was there. It's in the line or not in the line. Do we have that today? No. That is the creativity. We killed it. American companies have done a lot of damage by bad management. And if nothing else, these are the lessons to be learned. In my days, I set up factories in the early 80s in Asia when imports were just starting. We were teaching the Asians how to manufacture the American way. Then we started giving them the IP. This is who I sell to. This is how much I'm going to sell for. This is the product. These are the measurements. These are the patents. So these are the garments and specifications. We gave the entire business on a silver platter to the Asians. And then we would wonder, why is China buying all these companies in California? Or why they are buying all these brands? Or why they are going direct to the consumer or through the retailer? No, it's all our own doing. Don't you think so?
That's a big question.
It sure is. It bothers me a little bit because I live here. This may be Indian, but I'm an American.
Sure.
I make money here. I pay taxes here. And it saddens me to see the state that we are in. We once were the most creative people. Today we are asking the vendors in Asia, can you give me the style ideas? Can you give me the designs? How shameful is that?
It is, and that's how the industry unfortunately has changed. And some of that has been through greed of how companies are managed, and it's managed just for profitability and not to continue the spirit of the business. There have been investments in our industry that have really taken the heart and soul out of some of the better brands in the industry. When your ad spend is down, your output in terms of product development and research and development trips are cut, and that's hurt the industry. There's been many great companies that have been stripped of vital resources based upon the economics of the business, and it's forced companies to lean on their vendors in Asia to provide these services. I can tell you that, in my opinion, there are some great manufacturers in, I know you spend time in South Asia, and there's great manufacturers in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka for sure, and throughout China and Greater China. They cannot bring the same design aesthetic that an American or European designer does. They reinterpret, they bring ideas, they repurpose, but they don't bring the same creativity. I agree with your last comment, and I would like to see a return in creativity to our industry here in the States and in Europe. And I believe it's coming with these smaller, pure play, e-commerce only, pure play businesses that have the opportunity to be creative on their own.
What would you like to tell the large company, the large retailer, the large manufacturer to look for as far as 5 changes if they had to make? Which will be the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is. So I'll start here. So American brands or European brands that are trying to expand, grow beyond their core geography, don't be afraid of making change. Go global, act local. That's not a new term. You've heard that before. But it's really important. So for me, if I owned a brand and I was based here in the States and my revenue's largely driven here in the United States, and I wanted to expand, say, for instance, to the UK, or say, for instance, to China, I can't be afraid to make changes to my brand, not just to fit because of the petite fit in Asia, but I can't be afraid to make changes to color or to the aesthetic as long as I don't strip my core DNA away, you have to be able to make changes. And I think a lot of the brands that have gone to Asia, to China, to other parts of the world, they just felt that my brand is so strong. My brand is strong enough to be able to go into a foreign market. And I think those days you have to be able to be flexible. And I think you have to be able to listen to her, to you, to whoever it may be in that country, and know that I'm still bringing Americana, my brand, but to change. And that's the first thing I would say. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, perfect. You're dead on.
The second one that's most important to me is really about using data to make more informed decisions. So the data, the various touches in the consumer has in my store, on my website, social media, I can harvest that. I can go onto your profile, your Facebook profile, your Instagram profile. I could harvest that information and understand your likes, your dislikes, and what you're saying about me, my product. And to harvest all of this and to be able to make decisions, if you are in my customer database, to be able to make decisions in planning and forecasting, that's a big deal. The scarcity model that Zara has, scarcity model, they think they're going to sell 1,000 pieces, they buy 750. There's no markdown in that.
FOMO, fear of missing out.
But
they are the masters. They created that.
That's a fantastic model. It's a model where the IMU is right out of the gate what they're going to receive. It's not the Macy's model. I'm not picking on Macy's. It's the industry. We think we could sell 1,000 units. We're going to buy 2,000 units. They do sell 1,000 at regular price. The second 2,000 pieces are sold with some type of cadence, some type of markdown. And then the blended IMU, the blended gross margin, is not enough. I suggest moving to a scarcity model. I suggest to purchase what you think you can sell right out of the box, quickly, turn it, convert it into cash, and use the data that you harvest, the data that's available in your systems to make more informed planning and forecasting decisions, to build that single user profile for marketing to her and for understanding when to mark down goods and when to move away from product. It's all about data.
Absolutely.
It's about data.
Absolutely.
So in terms of personalization, in terms of customization, in terms of curation, it's data. There is art and science here. At the end of the day, there's art and science, and our industry has been largely run by art. And that's a good thing. I'm not suggesting the art to go away.
No.
But science is more critical than it's ever been. And for brands and retailers to be successful, you must harvest the data and use that science. So that's three big reasons or suggestions that I would have for retailers or brands on how do you grow your business.
Okay.
So,
well, to add, my suggestion would be to think small and scale the business. Think in small chunks, because we are now dealing with individuals. The data is going to get drilled down to eventually each consumer, so to speak, rather than a segment of people. Each consumer have a different shape, different requirement, and each individual wants to show their individuality. Mm-hmm. And give them, whoever gives them that opportunity will be the shining star of this business, because you just provided them something that they've been longing. They don't want to be seen doing the same thing. They all want to do the individual, whatever their preference is. And I've seen this in a lower scale. Digital technologies have done huge difference. I'll give you an example. Historically, we sell certain number of sizes. Mm-hmm. Because our business model has been, we design it, we develop it, we manufacture it, and then we warehouse or we distribute through the retail stores and then sell it. Mm-hmm. Even for the e-commerce models, we have to have the distribution centers and have the goods in the warehouses before we can show what we want to sell.
Yeah.
The contrary model is design it, develop it, sell it, and then make it. design it, develop it, sell it, and then make it. And it kind of slowed down a lot of people thinking, well, that's all right for a very small startup company. But I've seen some huge corporations now doing 40 to 60,000 garments a day. A day. Every day, 40 to 50,000 customers design their own size and garment, and those garments are produced. Now, are they making profit? Huge. They're financed by their own consumers. They get paid 100% upfront. The startup companies love this business model. In Pakistan, for example, there are 7 different brands who've done this very successfully and grown tremendously. The data, which is what you've emphasized quite a bit on that. In the old days, we always wanted to know, can we body scan a person? Can we get all the body scan data? Well, God, the people don't know how to mine the data. I already know what the garment measurements were. I already know what your measurements are from your purchase. And you keeping that garment, I already know what should fit you. I'll give you one more example, because we spoke about pants, denim. Historically, we've had 2-inch grade, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, and so on, because we want to keep lower number of SKUs in stock. That's a business model. We'll probably have 2 or 3 inseams for cross grading. Again, because that multiplies all these into more SKUs.
Correct.
Bigger risk.
Correct.
But if the customer has to go and find somebody to hem it, because I had the right waist side, but I didn't have the right inseam, think on the now digital model. I have a client who actually makes 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, all the way, every size possible, because I have digital data. I don't have any inventory. And I offer from 27 inseam to 34, 36 inseam, even allow you to put in your inseam, and I'll make it. Just remember, my business model is I want to make what I've sold. If that's the case, and I just expanded my horizon from the old business model of thinking from the SKUs, I just reached out to a lot more people who have different bodies.
I think it's interesting what you're saying, and you're back to the word agility, which we spoke about earlier. And I have to tell you, as a consumer, there's aspects of that where I could curate and personalize my purchase that is really exciting for me. Not long ago, I purchased denim jeans, non-denim denim jeans, 5 pockets from a company in the UK called Spoke, and they were custom made for me. It took a month to get them. By the time I got them, I forgot that I had ordered them, and I was kind of like unhappy that I came in. And then I bought the jeans. They fit me perfect, and I wore them. But I would not return because I did not want to wait a month. So there is actually, the industry has changed thanks to Amazon, which is the greatest fulfillment company in the industry. They're not an apparel company, but they're a fulfillment company, and they're great at what they do. But 2-day free shipping is kind of the norm. So with that as a baseline, how does a company that produces, whether it's being produced in Guangdong province, whether it's being produced in Colombo, wherever in the world, how do you compete with that when the freight from Hong Kong to come to the States is still, when you have to clear, you're still looking at 3 to 5 days. How do you compete with that? So the challenge is that the consumer on one hand wants it fast, and he or she wants it in 1 to 2 days free. But when we're talking about consumer, what is that tolerance? I don't want to wait a month. I don't want to wait 2 weeks. So somehow we need to find, as it from the industry, I'm a consumer and I'm looking for a solution here. I'm not sure what that is right now. I personally think that there's a way to offer, and there's a lot of companies right now that are offering MTM, made to measure. And there's a way where you have a template. You have a few fabrics, a slub denim, a few fits, a few collars. I use my denim shirt. And then you're able to quickly make it, but you're still looking at the fulfillment depending upon where it's stitched. Say Guangdong shipped from Hong Kong, I get it in 7 days. Is that enough? I'm not so sure.
There are, because I work with a lot of vendors who work with multiple retailers. We just set up a factory about a year ago in Vietnam where, interestingly, everybody within the supply chain is spending more. But the consumer is getting it at less money, and everybody's making more profit. Because we've taken away that animal called marked down 40% allowance.
Yeah, I think that's
that
interesting.
kind of kills you. So we kind of have to think from a clean slate, how do we work with this business model? Now, the interesting part is with guys like you and me who have been to the industry and kind of grew up with certain legacy systems and certain processes and so on, we have a baggage. We think business is done this way.
Markdown is a legacy.
Yes.
It's a legacy output.
Correct. Now, if you look at the new generation, the startup companies, they are growing up with technology. To them, this is a second nature. They look at what needs to be done and they find a technical solution for that. You're right. I am going to limit my product range and set up my specialty units if I'm going to make denim shirts or denim pants or colored pants or dresses or whatever, and use my technology. Because I'm going to make one of a kind, my cost will go up a little.
It will.
I'm going to fly that thing in.
Yes,
I'm going to fly it and send it straight to the consumer. That's where the logistics come in.
Yes.
Amazon is doing it. We have right now customers getting at midnight. They don't know whether they're going to have 968 pants to do or 1,143 garments. They don't know which sizes and which colors, but they have those fabrics ready. Technology has been put in where we combine the colors for sewing. Doesn't matter what sizes it is. We combine the cutting for the sizes and we do the planning, but it's all done manless. This is where technology plays a role.
I like it.
In 3 days, we are producing those garments and shipping it by air. The factory is getting $3 a garment more and is making more money making less garments, but it's a different business model.
It's a different business model. They have to get $3 more than the standard allowed minutes are much higher. And but it's a more productive model. You're right on that. And there, over the last couple of years, Mike Todaro and Sue Strickland from AAPN have emphasized this with Barbara Zines. And Barbara did a really good job of talking about the markdown and the impact on the business. You remember some of those conversations? And at the end of the day, if we could find a way to eliminate the markdown, not even all of it, because you're going to have maybe excess fabric, excess inventory of tags, tickets, labels, trim, whatever it may be. But to reduce the markdown from the number used is 40, and I'll embrace that, 40%. Reduce it to 20, that's a big freaking deal. That's the difference. The question is, can we move to a MTM made-to-measure custom model for the industry? The answer is no. But there's a place in that in the industry, and that I think it's closer to where the industry is changing, not only in customization and the embracing technology, but sustainability, and there's a real attraction to sustainability, to inclusion. There's a brand, ModCloth, that you may have heard of. It's a women's fashion brand here in Los Angeles focused on vintage apparel. And their product range is about inclusion and offering product for whoever she may be. And it's a wonderful model, and that's a strategy that they have. And there's many other companies like that are looking for ways to be attractive to the core consumer. So they're not competing with the Gap or American Eagle or Abercrombie & Fitch and have that same old product offering. So I think that the times are interesting. 2020 is going to be a great year for our industry. Business here in the United States is still very strong. In other parts of the world, I think that there's a reset in Korea, there's a reset in Japan. Hong Kong is still reeling from the protests and the riots. I'm going to be in Hong Kong next week. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for me as a brand investor here in the States. We're going to Asia with our product. And that will evolve. It's not just Americana. It's our product that we will take to Asia.
That was your second advice, to think local but go global. Yes, I remember. Guess has been a very dear customer of ours for many decades, and I recall when they had a licensee in Korea selling the same sizes, and the senior management from Guess decided to take that brand back, make that specific for that country with their sizing, make in Europe for European fit rather than trying to fit everybody into the same American bodies. We can go into the fit, and that's a topic very close.
Important topic.
Yeah, I had a very long conversation with Ilsa Metchek on fit. This has been a very closed subject, yet it's been a hit and miss process for a lot of people. 2008-9, you started out your conversation. There were a lot of adjustments made within the company. I recall I had about 800 resumes on my desk from my friends in the industry who were either let go or laid off, or the company's closed, or whatever reason, but they were out of work. Most of them out of the United States. It was a big jolt that the industry needed to make a massive change. Those jobs were never replaced. Those jobs were never replaced. And I loved many of them, but my sympathies were with the management who let them go. Certain people become too comfortable, and then they start protecting their job rather than making a change for the company. Although everybody was trying to go overseas to reduce the costs, some of these guys were still flying business class and first class, staying in the five-star hotels just to have a visit at the vendors, but they were not adding any value, while they were out there kicking the rear end of the vendor by reducing 5 pennies on a garment and justifying their trips.
Yeah.
Those were replaced by some techies at $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, but these guys were making $500,000 to $1 million a year. Do you feel that time is coming back again for another jolt?
No, I don't. I think it's changed. I think that if we were taking an organization that had 100 people, or back in 2008 and 2009, you would have a large research and development team. You would have a substantial design, technical design, and product development team. These positions are still important. You need people to develop product. But what did not exist back then, except for a few people, were a team that were focused on social media, a team that was focused on direct marketing, a team that was looking at e-commerce touches and capturing the analytics from those touches, the KPIs, average order value, conversion rate, page views, dwell time, drop time, bounce rate. These things didn't happen. And a company that had 100 people back then, their tech teams, and I'm not talking about infrastructure, I'm talking about tech, just a handful, less than 5. Today, a company with 100 people could have 20 in tech.
Or more.
Yeah. And you're using that to build the business. I think the time of maybe a company resetting and making adjustments is putting people where people need to be. I'm still big on product. I'm a product guy, like you are. But it's the data. And so the investments are now in other parts of the business. in technology and communication. That's the business.
One of the seminars I gave, we talked about old assets and new assets. All the old assets like big buildings and large inventories and all that nonsense is gone. It's now all about data, the information, the relations, the brand. And if you have that, you can build this. So it has created a lot more opportunities. I'll share something which I felt over the last 5 years has been the reason for our growth. The decision maker today for our kind of technology, although we are making patent making, grading and marker making or cutting or design related technologies, but the decision maker today is the CIO of the company, is the CTO of the company, who's looking at their infrastructure and looking at how this information relates and how it translates to the next decision maker who needs to have that information available to make their decision right.
I agree with that. The chief, let me just help you with the vernacular. It's the chief digital scientist that is,
I like that.
That is making those important decisions. And it's both infrastructure and commerce. It's not e-commerce. It's unified commerce.
Correct.
And that's a key role in today's company. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then just one of the last couple of things, I know we're ending soon, but to talk about brand, that hasn't changed. Brand back in the 80s, you were referring to the 80s and when you started in the business as a young man in the 80s, and brand was important. Some of the great brands, you mentioned Liz Claiborne, and there were great brands, Polo and Levi and VF, and there were a lot of great brands in the industry. Some of them are gone, some of them are not. But it was about brand. And that brand used the vehicle that was available to them, which was traditional marketing through traditional means and through the department stores and other retailers to be able to get to their core customer. The brands did not have their own stores. It didn't exist at that time. Today, the brand has a different vehicle. The different vehicle is direct to consumer via my own website, through my own specialty stores, and still selling through Bloomingdale's. Nordstrom's, great player today. But it's still about branding. And
absolutely.
The efforts of your great software that you have and investments that we look at in the industry, it all starts with the great brands. And I think that's an important component that anybody in our industry that forgets that and doesn't protect the core, so
your advice, A, build a brand, protect that identity of the brand.
Core. Correct.
Live to the image of that brand, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Get that information. However you want to get that, but get that information.
Harvest that data.
Mm-hmm. And use that data to enhance the brand again.
To build intimacy.
But business happens automatically. My suggestion to all the CEOs of the largest public-private companies to think of the real world that they have been talking about sustainability. Start sustainability of your business first. The sustainability of the business is not going to happen by thinking such short-term goal next quarter.
Quarter to quarter.
Next quarter.
Correct. Agreed.
We have to start thinking next quarter of a century. That is longevity. Mm-hmm. That is building a long-term relations and long-term solutions, because we were discussing before, so many startups kind of cost it that I will lose money in my startup for a certain amount before I get profitable. Mm-hmm. Who starts a venture to lose money? Everybody wants to start making money from day one, unless you are a long-term thinker that this is the cost of developing that business which will give me that sustainability.
It's a great comment. That's a great comment. Super.
Thank you, Jeff.
I've enjoyed sitting here with you this
Always
afternoon.
a pleasure. Always a pleasure to listen
Here
to
we
you.
are, 2020, a great year. It's going to be a great year. I know it. I feel it.
From your mouth to everybody's ears, let's all make it happen. 2020, happy 2020.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tukatalks. Visit tukatech.com/Tukatalks to join the conversation. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.